Hi, and welcome to the Quiz 3 review. Just 7 quick slides to get you prepared for Wednesday's quiz. Studying tips for Quiz 3. So Quiz 3 is all really about verbs, subject-verb agreements, using the past tense correctly. Here's what you need to do. You have to be able to conjugate for me the verbs be, do, and have. So those are very irregular verbs. And you need to be familiar with those in the present tense. I also need you to memorize the past tense form of irregular verbs. Recognize the subject of a sentence. And please also review Chapter 7, Process. I'll have a process paragraph for you to edit on the quiz. To conjugate a verb, make a list of the 6 voices, 3 in the singular and 3 in the plural, that are going to be paired with the verb. The first person voice is when you say I. The second is when you say you. Third person of the singular is he, she, and it. Notice that with this regular verb to walk, it's only in the third person of the singular that the verb ending changes. So third person singular regular verbs, you add an S. That's odd. You would expect the S to go with a plural subject, but that's not the case. Notice in the plural forms of the verb, it doesn't change at all. We walk, you walk, they walk. Here's an irregular verb in the present tense. This is the verb to be. There are a couple of things I'd like you to notice here. Notice that the root of the verb changes. So the verb to be, notice that you don't see be at all in the present tense. You see I am. And then the root is again missing in the second person, third person. So very, very irregular verb here. And again, notice there's no be in the present tense when you conjugate the verb to be. I am, you are, he is. We are, you are, they are. How do you form a regular verb in the past tense? You just add ed to the root of the verb. Gets a little trickier with irregular verbs because the root of the verb changes. So, for example, the verb to be, very irregular. I was, you were. So there's no ed added on. Same thing with very common verbs like take, to take. Past tense is I took a book to school. And you have to memorize these if you're not familiar with them. So Chapter 29 will have a list of irregular verbs to study. Okay, let's do a little practice here with subject-verb agreements. So what we're going to do is not only pick out the right verb here, but also focus on the subjects in the sentence, the verbs, so we make sure that we have the correct subject-verb agreement. In this first instance, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. either honor or honors men and women killed or missing in the war. So let's take a look first here at the verb. So the verb is of course going to be one of these two, either honor or honors. So we have to figure out what the subject is to decide which one we want. So let's look at the subject in the sentence. Remember the trick of putting parentheses around prepositional phrases so you don't mistakenly think that something in a prepositional phrase is the subject. So I'm going to put a parentheses around in Washington, D.C. because of course in is a preposition. In Washington, D.C. is a prepositional phrase. We have another prepositional phrase, in the war, at the end of the sentence. So, okay, now our sentence boils down to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial either honor or honors men and women killed or missing. So, this Vietnam Veterans, that just describes the memorial. The memorial, that is the subject of our sentence. So when you boil it all down, it's memorial honors. So it will be third person of the singular, so it gets the form with the S around it. Let's move on to the second sentence. There is or are more than 58,000 names carved into the black granite wall. Again, we can get rid of the prepositional phrase. So what's the subject of the sentence? Notice that there is located right before this little verb form here. Could it be there? There and here are never the subjects of a sentence. So let's get rid of there. So what is or are, or who is or are? The answer is names. Names are carved. So you have a plural subject, so you have to have the plural form of the verb. Names are carved. That's a third person of the plural. Okay, let's move on to the third sentence. More than 2.5 million people visit or visits the site each year. So we don't have a prepositional phrase in that sentence. So let's look more closely at what the subject of this verb could be. Who or what visit? Well, it's people. And people is one of those nouns that even though it doesn't have an S on it, it's in the plural. So the correct answer, third person of the plural, remember it doesn't take the S. More than 2.5 million people visit the site each year. Fourth sentence, often visitors to the memorial leave or leaves mementos. Let's get rid of that prepositional phrase. So our verb is leave or leaves. We say who or what leave or leaves. Visitors. Visitors leave. Third person of the plural. Again, it's the form without the S. And the last one, the trickiest one. So let's get rid of the prepositional phrase. Of these, remember, of is a preposition, just like in or on. So we get rid of the prepositional phrase, then we have each has or have a special significance. And then we say who or what has or have. And the answer is each. And each is one of those indefinite pronouns that is always singular. So we want the singular form of this verb. It's going to be has. Each has a special significance. All right, that concludes the Week 3 review. Good luck on the quiz.